back for the third and final video for Washington, D.C.
Hi.
All right, let's move on. We got a lot to cover. So the first museum here is the African American History and Culture, Smithsonian.
This was, I think, one of the most informative, heartbreaking, and just the kind of museum that really lights a fire under you and just makes you want to learn more.
So just to kind of frame this out so that we go through some slides quickly, you start on ground level when you walk in, and then you immediately go down, and you're going to go through the most ancient parts of the history and slowly work back to ground level. The top floors are all kind of more popish and more recent sectional ideas. Okay.
And obvious, a quote from James Baldwin. It's on the granite, so it has this very old look and facade to it.
Yeah, this is feet tall. All right, we are on the very bottom of that elevator that I described.
So we have reasons why slavery was a thing, because slavery was very different in the 1300s and before that, where there was much more of a contract. It had nothing to do with color or where you were from. You basically said, could I have this thing from you, and I will work for you for so many years, and that contract was over. But then when we had a little bit more of global trade, coffee, tea, sugar, chocolate were the big ones. We as a world globe had decided that people were going to be part of that expense.
Right. You may have heard of some of this as the triangle trade, right? People going from Africa to the American colonies, and then finished goods going up to Europe, and then back around. Okay, let's move on quickly.
So, of course, we have the heartbreaking statues of families being torn apart and things like that. But one of the big reasons why we decided on this particular picture is actually in the lower right-hand corner, where you can kind of see a screen that kind of gives you a lot more information than just the words on the wall. It's much more interactive, so you can understand.
This was very interactive and very able, any type of person, very inclusive. Wheelchairs can roll around here. It's very accommodating for any type of disability. So good props to this design. Okay, so I'm going to just describe where we are. We have come out of that kind of earliest time period, and you immediately see more light. Some of this light is created by the camera. It's not this bright. And one side of these statues are all these politicians. Some of them are abolitionists, but they're showing contrasting views in Washington. On the other side is the statue on the right, which is the actual day-to-day life of people who are trying to make it better, who are African American. Okay. Ready?
Ready. This picture, the one on the right, is a downward view of where we've come, where we came from. We were walking up, and the times had changed slowly and with great prevail. African Americans through the war and everything, and on the laws being changed, was able to go from having to live in these slave huts to become free people. But with that also came issues that you see on the left of colorism.
Right.
And this is, of course, left over from the slave days, in which lighter skinned African Americans were able to work in the homes, while the darker ones worked in the field. And this is just something that kept going even though slavery was abolished.
So here's a good kind of famous reference. So after the heavy floors of history, starting from 400 years ago and going through everything from slavery to Martin Luther King and the 1960s, we finally made it back to ground level, and you need kind of a moment. So this is a reflecting pond, a quiet moment in here. And now we kind of move on up the building.
So here's where things get a little more fun in pop culture, where we can look at movies and the 1960s civil rights movement, and of course the powerful women that brought justice to African American populations in America.
Right. There's a lot of different groups that were fighting for justice.
And of course,
you can see the different parades and the marches from the 60s, 70s, how they're different eras in different parts of the fight that are being displayed here, from screen and onwards. Gonna keep rolling forward. Okay, so now we're on the upside, the above the ground level. We've made it out of that area, and we had a whole thing about theater. So I studied dance, big fan of Alvin Ailey's dance style, basically created a lot of what we define modern dance as today. Got anything? Okay.
And of course, representation matters. And finally, having musicals where Black people are featured and not just a side character or being portrayed by someone else.
Musicals, stage plays, written, directed, acted, not just as characters, but their stories being told. It really changed. These are all, a lot of these are Pulitzer Prize winners. I'm sorry, that was the best shot. A lot of glare in there.
And lastly, we have a little bit more modern with rock and roll and Hollywood, and some things can be argued to be caricature, but we can see more and more representation as the years go on.
Right. Now some comedians channeling your stage.
And of course, I mean, I grew up laughing with Richard Pryor, so I had to even though it was a bad angle, I had to include him.
Absolutely. All right, and when you are near the top of the building, there's a great place to just take pictures outwards. It also gives you a good reference point for where we are on the mall, because that is Lincoln Memorial all the way over there. All right, let's move on to the next museum. American History Museum, right, another Smithsonian. So
they had a special exhibit. It's a revolving exhibit, and this one was, obviously you can see it's music history, and it's all about women who have made a mark in history through their culture's music. So you have Latinas, you have like Ella Fitzgerald, and you have Aretha Franklin, and of course white, Black, Asian, whatever. We are all represented here, especially in the next one, and I think everyone will be quite surprised.
All right. Anybody we see in the bottom?
Yeah, somebody look familiar there. So keep going. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
So here's a little bit more up close and personal. Our queen. When I think of the queen, I don't think of the Queen of England. I think of this queen, Queen Liliuokalani, and she was also a songwriter. So she was featured in this revolving exhibit.
So many songs she wrote.
This was a separate part of the American history, which were people of color who were innovators. So, of course, Madam C.J. Walker, who has been kind of a hero of mine, and she understood the beauty of women of color and just went with it. And look her up, fascinating woman.
So I'm going to just pause here, maybe while you can enjoy this slide. But when we talk about the American history, it has a pretty wide idea of what it has to accomplish. From trains and planes to ancient books that were written, there's a lot that falls into Americana. In fact, the African American history and culture, its original exhibits, were one floor in this museum. And thankfully, it got split off because there's so much of what is America. All right, let's move on.
Well, this is a little bit of a stain on our American culture, which was how we exploited other cultures around the world, whether we called it trade or whatever, but we even exploited our own people. Um, there are parts of our history in which our own children that we would consider our own were starving. We exploited Asians, we exploited Black people, and I really appreciate that the Smithsonian included this.
Yeah. They do not flinch away from the history that they're embarrassed from, unlike some museums that, well, that's spoilers. Let's move on. Oh, look, it's Howdy Doody time.
Yes, what's Americana without some, good old-fashioned pop culture? So we've got,
Howdy Doody time. And there's Mickey Mouse's ears, and there's
yes,
Cookie Monster,
and of course the
the
Ruby
Ruby
Slippers.
Slippers.
Oh, don't forget Mr. Peanut and Barbie.
Yes. All right, moving right along.
Movies, TV shows, and Muppets.
Absolutely. Those are the actual chairs and the all right. Sometimes I don't have much to say.
And of course, another one of my favorites, Miss Julia Child.
There's an entire exhibit just for kitchen.
Yes, for food and kitchen, and not just Americana food and kitchen, but like all cultures, food and kitchen within America. But I specifically wanted Julia Child because she rocks. So.
And more different parts of Americana.
And what are we but nerds? Of course, we have to include Star Wars and Star Trek in our video. It just has to be a thing.
The center of the three, that is from Star Trek Discovery, and we had to include the Queen herself.
Yes. And these are the other departments that we didn't really get a chance to see very much of. The Archive Center was closed. The libraries, gallery was interesting, but you couldn't really take a lot of pictures. It was very dark. And
same problem happened in the coin collections. Everything was full of glare.
Everything was just very glare. But we tried to grab as many pictures as we could. But moving on. And this was part of the American business. We and innovations. We did invent a lot of things with wheels.
Sure. And these are the best pictures we could get out of the coins, and we took probably 40 pictures in there because I love coins, and these are the ones that you can actually kind of see what the picture is of. So it was a struggle. But this is our last slide. Thank you for hanging with us. If you're like, man, I really didn't get a good feel, because you need to go. Everybody needs to go. These were amazing museums. They're experiences, and we're not even cracking the surface of everything they talk about.
And most importantly, they are free.
Right. Smithsonian's, all, I don't know, 18 of them, 19 of them, are free.
So if you do get a chance to get to DC, or if you live around there, you really just don't feel bad. Even if you only want to go to one department within a museum, do it. It's free. You can just go and look at a revolving exhibit, or just look at one thing that you like. If you just want to go to the American history and take a picture of those ruby slippers, go do it, because hey, it's free, and it's awesome, and you'll learn something.
It's not like you paid $40 to go to the museum and you want to make it worth your while. You can just go, see a couple of things, and head out. The postal from the other video, also with Smithsonian, also free. But we have really enjoyed these 3 videos from DC, and the next video is going to involve like a route change, and who knows where we end up.
Who knows? Well, we'll see you guys next time.
Next time.